how optimistic are you about the Bears offense as a whole, but specifically Caleb Williams being a guy who can get DJ Moore out of quarterback wilderness in 2025? And the Bears are hoping beyond that.
I'm very optimistic if we're talking about Caleb being able to get DJ Moore out of quarterback wilderness. I'm worried that maybe DJ Moore doesn't get himself out of quarterback wilderness. Like, let's just see how everybody meshes here on the Bears. I mean, it's one of these things, like, you show, you don't tell. And the Bears showed us their hand when they're like, all right, let's get Colson Loveland. All right, let's get Luther Burden. And they kind of just kept adding all these weapons here. They didn't add anything in the backfield, really, outside of Kyle Monangai. It seems like they want to pass the ball with the Ben Johnson offense. It's going to be a lot of pre-snap motion. It's going to be a lot of players lining up in different spots. I remember being there and watching the draft and seeing Colson Loveland. I'm like, ooh, that's cool because he can play in the slot. And then Luther Burden gets picked, and I'm like, ooh, that's cool because he can play in the slot. And I'm like, they have DJ Moore. That's cool. He can play in the slot. And I just kept saying the same thing over and over. So it's an exciting offense. And I think as long as this is such a cop-out answer, but I think as long as all the intangible stuff goes right with DJ Moore, he can absolutely be out of the quarterback wilderness. Now, does that necessarily mean he's going to be giving us that top 10 production like maybe he's been able to do in the past? Maybe not, but he can still be really good for fantasy, and this Bears offense can be really good as a whole, because I see Caleb Williams as a guy that he can go ahead and sustain if he's playing at his best. And with his pedigree, he could sustain 2 or 3 top flight pass catchers in fantasy. It's going to take time, and it's going to take a really successful Ben Johnson offense. But if everything goes well, yeah, there's plenty of guys in this offense that can be really good for fantasy.
Such good points there. And like, you basically took the words out of my mouth from the article, which is like, I'm pretty confident that Caleb Williams is going to end up being someone who can get the Bears as a whole out of the wilderness. It's just up to DJ Moore to play better in isolation than he did last year, because that's the thing. Like, for everything that has been not DJ Moore's fault throughout the course of his career, there was a lot last season that, whether it was outside variables or whatever, he let it leak onto the field, and it became partially his fault what went wrong last year. Not just entirely his fault, but he's got to own a big chunk of how that went last year. And where I've just been suspicious is the fantasy community's sort of insistence based on just Fantasy Pros consensus rankings. Like, DJ Moore is the 41st player off in consensus rankings right now, and the next one doesn't come around until Rome Odunze at the 81st overall player. Like, and look, I am completely compromised in this because I'm a fan of Rome Odunze. I think he played really well last year in isolation. I was very, very high on him as a prospect. That not that he was perfect last year, but I think he played much better than the stats indicate. But I think he's got a pretty secure role as the team's X receiver. It's sort of that, as you mentioned, this guy's in the slot. This guy can be a flanker. That's where it sort of gets blurry there. So it's more weirdly, for the first time in his career, even though we haven't seen it with Caleb Williams yet, I actually have more questions about DJ himself than necessarily where the quarterback's going to be by the end of the year.
Yeah, man. And you mentioned Rome Odunze. Like, I'm actually pretty excited about him, especially at cost. This is a guy that was really good coming out of Washington. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that are just sort of down on him after, I mean, the same way that people are down on Marvin Harrison Jr. too, where it's like, 900 yards and what he did last year is not a good rookie season. Cool. I'll take the discount on those guys in drafts. And Rome Odunze is one of those guys I'm excited to take a discount on and see how low I can actually get him in fantasy drafts. DJ Moore, while I think he can have a good season and the potential's there, especially for the Bears offense, I don't know that I want to get him at his current cost. You said, what, 4th round is where DJ Moore is going?
Yeah. We have him in our consensus ranks at like wide receiver 19. Fantasy consensus ranks wide receiver 19. Like, that's still, again, it's a big gap between him and everybody else. And I do think like the floor is a little lower than maybe some of these other players that, like Terry McLaurin, Devontae Adams, that he's ranked around. That's just my issue with Moore.